take over the police, unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful. Is there daylight between you and the mayor on this?
Well, I'd like to step back, Casey, just to kind of frame where we are, because there is no question that violent crime has an adverse impact on any community. Families, communities that are impacted by violent crime shouldn't happen anywhere, and certainly not here in the District of Columbia. And that's why we're laser focused on trying to reduce violent crime. What the president said yesterday at the press conference is very different than the facts on the ground here in the District of Columbia. We have done very well in reducing crime over the last couple of years. There's a lot more work to be done. But the fact of the matter is that local policing and local government have made meaningful strides in reducing crime in the District of Columbia. Our view is that if the federal government really wants to work with the District of Columbia to keep us safe, we welcome that. We are working every day and have been working every day with federal law enforcement in terms of keeping the residents and the visitors of D.C. safe. There was no need for a takeover of the MPD to do that. We can keep doing the work we've been doing in collaboration and cooperation with our federal partners.
What do you say to D.C. residents who simply don't feel like the city is safer now than it used to be?
I tell them that I feel that as well, that we want all to work together to reduce crime to where there is no crime in our city. That's what we all aspire to do. One crime is one too many. But we also have to recognize that we have made meaningful strides on violent crime in particular. Since January 2023, when I was elected, violent crime has been reduced by more than 50%. Homicides are down, carjackings are down. And so we do have more work to do, but we need to keep doing it in a smart, disciplined way. And the most effective way to address local crime is through local policing and local leadership. D.C. is a unique place. There are many federal buildings, federal parkland, federal jurisdictions, so we are used to working collaboratively with our federal partners. The key is that there's no need for a federal takeover, and in fact, this provision of our Home Rule Charter, Section 740, which has never in the more than 50 years of the District of Columbia ever been invoked by a president, is something that is not necessary right now. And I'm very concerned about making sure that the terms of the Home Rule Act, our law passed by Congress,
right,
the law of the country, is complied with.
Are you going to sue?
My focus right now is on the facts on the ground, understanding exactly what is happening and making sure that command and control of MPD remains with the chief of police and the mayor, that it has not been overtaken by the government. The Home Rule Act is clear that the president does have limited powers to assert an emergency and to ask for the services of MPD. It's limited in the sense that there need to be special emergency circumstances. It needs to be limited in time, and it needs to be limited for a federal purpose, not local law enforcement. But under all of those circumstances, even if they did exist, command and control of MPD remains with the mayor and the chief of police. The president can ask for services. The mayor is required to provide those services, but they're provided under the command and control of our local police department.
But if you've already said that this is unlawful, why not file a lawsuit now against the president?
I'm focused on practical results and resolving problems. And oftentimes, if you can resolve things without being in court, it's for the best interests of everybody involved. Right now, my focus is on D.C. residents, making sure that D.C. residents, visitors, employees are safe.
So let's talk about D.C. residents for a second, because these headlines, and I was a resident of D.C. for over 20 years. I've lived in all but 3 D.C. wards, okay? These headlines are different from when I first came to the city. 13-year-old girl, 13, sentenced to 7 years for 2023 beating death of a D.C. man. Teen sentenced in killing of Lyft driver who came to U.S. seeking safety. This was a guy who was a U.S. military interpreter who was shot and killed in an attempted carjacking, again, by a 16-year-old. Now, juveniles fall under you, and the D.C. Attorney General, Jeanine Pirro, D.C. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, has focused in on this inability that she says she has to prosecute juveniles. The law allows people up to the age of 24 years old to potentially have more lenient sentences from judges. Is that working for people in D.C.?
My office, since I've been the Attorney General, is prosecuting juvenile cases and holding young people who hurt other people accountable every day at higher rates and higher numbers than long before the pandemic. So much so that our mayor had to issue an executive order expanding the capacity of our juvenile detention facilities to hold people that we are prosecuting.
Should some of these people be prosecuted as adults?
All of these young people that are prosecuted under the law can, in certain circumstances, be prosecuted as adults under our existing laws and can be prosecuted as juveniles under other circumstances. And our laws are working. Our prosecution is working. And you're exactly right. The U.S. Attorney's Office in our city has jurisdiction over adults. The vast majority of crime that occurs in our city is committed by adults, not juveniles. And the jurisdiction to prosecute juveniles in our family court sits under our laws with my office, the Office of Attorney General.
The Washington Post wrote a very lengthy piece that they put on their front pages titled Empty Desks, a truancy rate of nearly 30% among middle school students. And they wrote that it's fueling a crime wave. Why is that happening? Is that not a failure of the mayor who is in charge of the school system?
Look, we need young people to be in school. We need young people to be engaged in their learning. There are so many contributing factors that often get in the way, that are barriers to kids getting into school, and we need to address those. And we are doing that as best we can. Certainly, young people should be in school learning, and all of us, the community members, the government, everybody around needs to make sure that that's a high priority. It's certainly a high priority for me and my office.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about is this cashless bail that the president brought up from the podium. Does that policy make it harder for D.C. officials to hold repeat offenders, people that the city knows have been behind previous crimes in the city? And do there need to be any changes to that policy?
Yeah, let's be clear. The District of Columbia has had a cashless bail system since the early 90s. This is nothing new. And the answer to your question is no. If a defendant in a criminal case is a flight risk, if we're worried about them leaving the jurisdiction, or they pose a threat to the public pending trial, courts can and do hold them pre-trial. The notion of holding people without bail because they can't afford to make bail is something that our country, our city, and many other jurisdictions around the country confronted long ago. That is a vestige of recent ancient history, not what really is fueling issues today.
Yeah, fair enough. How do you look at the connection, if you think there is one, between violent crime and a perceived acceptability of petty crime? I don't know if you've tried to buy a razor blade or some deodorant at a CVS in the District of Columbia lately, but it's a lot harder than it used to be. They're all under lock and key. There have been some CVS pharmacies that have closed in various parts of the city because this is such a problem. Would you like to see federal resources help fight petty crime to try to send a message?
I think that wherever additional resources can be brought to holding people accountable, we ought to look for ways to do that. I believe in respecting the law. Laws matter. Accountability matters. And whether it's a petty crime or a violent crime, people need to know that the rules matter and that they're going to be fairly and uniformly enforced. And certainly when we're talking about communities and businesses that are adversely impacted by petty theft, causing them perhaps, as you suggest, to leave the neighborhoods. That has huge adverse impacts on people. So my view is if the federal government wants to assist and partner with the District of Columbia, we are welcome to it. Does not require a federal takeover or the kind of invocation of the Home Rule Act that, as I noted, in the more than 50 years of our city has never been invoked by any president.
Finally, before I let you go, obviously the system here in D.C. is different than states, and we are impacted more by